Okay, so after doing my last video, which had nothing to do with Apple or iPads whatsoever, and getting a couple of iPad comments on my last video, I thought I'd do a video touching on the iPad. And while I think the iPad is the second generation iPad is definitely on a level playing field with the other tablets out there, and in particular Android Honeycomb OS, why I don't think that it's necessarily the greatest. And the reason why I don't think that is because I started looking at the features that they put into it and I'm thinking, wow, that's really cool that they've done that. And then when I looked at the features, I sort of realized that in some way they were limited just by Apple's own doing, with their own, time and time again, proprietary stuff that they insist on people using. And I'll get into what I mean by that. The cameras, great idea. You can do video calling now, as a lot of people suspected that the second generation iPad will have, which would use FaceTime. And that's what, is the deal breaker. Who can I video call with FaceTime? I can only video call someone who owns an iPhone 4 or a Mac. That's not good enough. If I'm going to video call someone, I want to be able to video call anyone on any computer, any PC, any tablet, any phone whatsoever. I don't want to have to use this proprietary stuff where I can only call someone that I know owns an iPhone 4. It's ridiculous. And then there's the video mirroring, aka HDMI out. Yeah, Apple's got to give it some stupid fucking special name. They can't just call it HDMI out. This is another thing I like about it. Wow, I can do, I can have HDMI out, just like the Motorola Xoom. The only difference is I have to buy the stupid adapter for it. Yes, that's right, it's sold separately. To be able to do what something like the Motorola Xoom can do without needing any special adapter. And that's one of the things that really annoys me. I mean, it looks completely hideous and ungainly. And it's just ironic, a lot of people that are into Apple, foam at the mouth at how stylish and sleek and sexy the iPad is, and then Apple do something ridiculous as this, as putting in such a hideous adapter. I mean, that doesn't look too bad, but then you get down to this, and not only do you need one cable coming into it, but two cables coming into it. It looks like there's a great big giant anaconda coming out the arse of the iPad or something like that. It's ridiculous. I mean, that just, is one of the most ridiculous solutions I've seen. Why they can't just put a normal HDMI port on the iPad so it can be plugged in like that and used that way directly is beyond me. So, okay, the adapter isn't too bad. You have to buy it, and it's probably going to cost about $30. Now, where do I get that $30 figure from? Well, because that's how much the other adapters cost. So if I want to get the full functionality out of this, these two cost $30. So I'm looking at about an extra $100 that I'm going to have to spend on the iPad just to get the sort of functionality out of it that I could get from a normal tablet, you know, without having to spend an extra single dime on it. And it's just ridiculous. That's what does it for me, you know. And the other thing that Apple introduced with iOS 4.3 was the ability to tether, or so they like to call it, personal hotspot. Yes, they have to have another stupid name for, you know, something that we all know by another name. It's great. You can tether now, but only with, guess what, an iPhone 4. So, you know, to get the full functionality out of this thing, I'm going to have to buy 3 fucking adapters, as long with the iPad itself, and an iPhone 4. Okay, it makes better sense just to buy a 3G iPad and go without buying the iPhone 4, but, you know, it just gets me that, you know, Apple do this. They put these awesome features in it and then severely limit it in some way that makes it, you know, almost ridiculous and stupid to have those features in there in the first place. Don't get me wrong, you know, to a certain extent I'm probably taking this, you know, over exaggerating and blowing this out of proportion, and to a lot of Apple users who already own something like an iPhone 4 or something like that, you know, this is going to be a lot more advantageous to them than buying an Android tablet. But to me, that's a deal breaker with the iPad, and that's why I say, you know, for me, it's a deal breaker, but it still will definitely compete with the other tablets out there, because there'll be a lot of Apple users that, you know, this will be a better deal for them and a better option for them. And I've heard comments that, you know, especially, you know, reiterating what Steve Jobs said in his keynote about how it's not about hardware, you know, other manufacturers have got it all wrong, it's about software. And he went through and listed some of the apps, you know, like iMovie and GarageBand, and don't get me wrong, those look really mint, and same with Photo Booth, but, you know, GarageBand and Photo Booth, you know, apps that I'm only going to spend probably like 5 minutes entirety of on in my whole entire life. So I have no use for them. I'm not going to waste $5 on GarageBand just to download it and to play around with it for all of about 5 minutes before I get bored of it. It's still an awesome application, a really awesome application for those who are interested in GarageBand, don't get me wrong, but, you know, it's nothing special for me. And iMovie is great, but once again, you know, $5. What's the deal with that? Okay, it's not bad for the price, but with the Mac, you know, it comes with the Mac. Well, with the iPad, you have to pay for it, you know, it doesn't come with it by default. What's up with that? And this is something that really attracts me more to an Android tablet running Honeycomb, because they also have a movie app for it that looks really awesome as well, and it looks like it's going to be a pretty decent competitor to iMovie. And what's more, I'm not too sure about this, but I think it's actually free. I'm not too sure about that. I may be wrong. So the apps just don't sell it for me. You know, with Android tablet, I've got all the apps that I want and that I need and require from it. So that attracts me more towards Android, an Android tablet. And finally, you know, Steve Jobs talks about software, but you look at iOS, and to me, it's just not as exciting and has as much going on for it and going for it as Android does at the moment. And you know, you can talk about apps all you want, but he's sort of missing the point with the operating system, because that's something that really attracts me towards the Android platform, the Android OS itself. But that's really always been the thing with Apple, is it's always been about apps, you know. Even with OS X, you know, some people prefer OS X, but when they make YouTube videos, they don't really talk about OS X itself. They talk about the fact that they like OS X because of the applications running on it, like iLife and ScreenFlow and Final Cut, etc., etc. And I think that's what Apple relies on, and has always relied on, is software. They make some really good software. It's just, for me, in my opinion, the hardware that lets them down. Anyway, that probably sums it all up for me, and please leave a comment down below on your opinions on you know, Apple's proprietariness, and do you think, you know, it's as big a deal as what I'm making out, or is it not as much of a big a deal for you? Anyway, thanks for watching.